Coming to order, please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we don't have any agenda additions or deletions today. Public comment? Superintendent report.
So we have Mr. Naniga and Mrs. Stolp here, and they'd like to report out on the beginning of the year.
She's here.
Hi, sorry.
And a tag along. So whoever wants to go first.
Well, you made notes, so why don't you go first?
Hello.
Why, if you could stand maybe over here or over there at the podium, that way Jay can get you on camera.
Over there? Okay.
You'll know Mr. Naniga, right?
How did you forget me?
Hey, good evening, guys. Three Creeks has had a pretty solid start to our year. We're excited to welcome the NICEC autism program to our building this year. It's been a really positive way for our staff and students to become more inclusive. We're calling it the RISE program, Reaching Independence Through a Structured Environment. So back to school night, we had a sensory friendly back to school night for them before everybody else came in, just quieter and less crowded. And then the parents really appreciated that from the get-go, that we were trying to be accommodating. And it was great to bring back our kids, because a lot of the kids were being bused to Maryville for the program. So it's nice to have our Tri Creek kids back in Tri Creek. Our staff meetings at the beginning of the year, everybody was anxious to get their rooms back in order. So in our building, we tried to just give them the essentials on those first days for those meetings, to give them some more time in their classrooms, and they appreciated that. Back to school night, had a positive vibe. Just reflecting on things and talking at our meeting at the superintendent's roundtable. We did talk about coming up with a system for maybe splitting up the groups so it's not so congested in the building. Lake Prairie's done that, maybe doing half of the alphabet during the first half and then half during the second half, just so it's not so crowded. Opening some more doors in my building, so that not everybody's funneling in through the front door, just making it a smoother situation. So those are kind of my beginning of the year things. Any questions?
Sounds good.
Thank you for the update.
Sure.
How would you say, so obviously, like, we talked about back to school night and stuff, but now that we're like a couple months in, how's it going?
Yeah.
Any, good, bad, ugly, otherwise?
I think it's going pretty smooth. This year our theme at Three Creeks is growing together. So we started off the year as a staff planting seeds and their herbs. But we keep going back to those seeds at our staff meetings and like seeing how they're growing, and then talking about how we're growing as individuals and what we need to care for ourselves and continue to grow and help our students grow. So I think just carrying that theme out throughout the year just keeps us in a positive headspace. So.
And you guys, all of our elementary schools no longer have fifth grade, so what is that like for your building to have now fourth graders be with you?
Yeah. I don't know yet. I mean, I don't want to, we were sad to see him go, but at the same time, I think it was good for them. And yeah, I mean, I think we're just still getting going, and I can't really reflect too much on it yet. I don't want to say we're sad, or we're happy to see them.
Does it seem more quiet?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
I remember as a principal, when a grade level would go on a field trip, the building would be like very calm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gives us a little more flexibility with our staff too, yeah, to our support staff.
So we'll ask you at the next board meeting how it feels. Just kidding.
All right,
Well, great, thank you for the update.
sure.
it. Jot down.
Go my notes.
You gave me some good ideas.
So let's see, for the second summer, we had construction and the teachers got into the building, the day school, the first teacher day, which is not something they like, but they're amazing with it. They're so flexible, just, won't say go with the flow, but understanding and just willing to do what they had to do at that moment to get started. So it was definitely a little bit of a crazy lead up to school, but one thing at back to school night that was just so cool was to see how excited the kids were to see the addition. For a year, they watched it be built from the outside. They, had the fake doors up there, and they would constantly ask about what was going on behind those doors. So for them to actually get to see it at back to school night was really cool. Like, they were so excited about it. It's been neat, now that once school starts, the kids come and everything's back to normal, right? All the craziness is forgotten and it's just your typical school year. But it's exciting to have the 3rd and 4th grade back there. I mean, they're pretty far from the front of the office, but it's like they have their own little space. And in the mornings before school starts, the kids are in the other hallways, they're lined up in the halls, along the wall, along the lockers. But back in the 3rd and 4th grade wing, I have 2 aides back there and the kids just kind of sit around and talk and hang out. So it's kind of a neat experience for them to have that and for the other grades to not be able to see it. And think that that's okay because they can't quite handle it. But so far they've done a really nice job with that and they kind of know like these are the expectations for that time. And if we can't follow them, then we're gonna have to sit like we did in the other grades. And they, definitely don't wanna do that. So that's.
So that kind of like window cubby area, is that?
Yeah, they're just kind of all back, they're in that big empty area by the 2 glass rooms there. Some of them are sitting around at their lockers. Then, in the other grade levels, it's always kind of just for order. And those hallways are so much smaller, they sit outside their classroom. There's not much mingling of classrooms, but here, we do try and keep thirds kind of to this way and 4ths kind of to that way, but they just have a little more freedom, which is good for them. So that was very exciting for them.
How are you guys all living in that space? I know that I've built a couple new houses over my time, and when you're planning that and designing it, you think it's all great. And then once you get into it, you're like, oh, is there are you living in that space well? Is it working out?
Yeah, I
know
there's
there were some
definitely
things
some
that needed to be
weird
fixed.
things
Yeah.
that need to be adjusted. One thing that we've really, I don't know, I never thought about it, but those glass rooms are really echoey. So, what can we do to help with that? If, for the most part in there, you're pretty quiet in there, but we do want to get to the point where a group of kids might be in there working on a project or something like that. So sound will definitely be an issue. Or I was testing in there the other day and I sneezed, and I'm a really loud sneezer. It was very echoey. But really that's the only thing outside of just things we know are going to have to be fixed, like their locks are weird. And just your typical moving into a new place.
Yeah.
You're like, that needs to be repainted or that needs to be touched up. So, but for the most part, that's smooth. Like John said, our back to school night, we've always kind of done the half and half. Obviously telling people if you can't come during your time, just come. But it definitely helps with flow. We have a very heavy entrance right, at 5 o'clock, at 5:45 or whatever the split is. And we don't kick people out, so if you have multiple kids, you need more than one. It's not a big deal. This year I did make both my children come with me and they took turns being our mascot. So that was kind of fun. We did have one instance where we had to send them into the office because I had a kindergartner screaming who would walk down the hall to leave because the mascot was by the door. But that was exciting for them. One other new thing our PTO started this year that I thought was just really cool, we call it our Cool Cat Closet. And so they asked for donations of old Lake Prairie clothes that no longer fit students. We took them, we washed them, and then we put out a form for kids in need. Or even our new kids who don't have Lake Prairie things until we do a fundraiser. So we were able to, I mean, it was, I'm gonna say it was over 40 articles of clothing we were able to give away to kids.
That's good.
I have like 5 more to bring.
Great, we'll take them. We've pretty much given what we had.
All right.
That was such a neat idea.
Yeah, my PTO president came up with that, and she's like, "Would we be able to do this?" And I mean, it's so exciting. The day they gave them out, they had them in Ziploc baggies with their names on it, and one of a new student who's a second grader, he was walking out with the car riders in the car rider line, and he was like swinging the bag around. He was so excited, just look at what I got. And so that was something they started this year that took very little, other than some laundry. But it was a really cool experience to see all the donations we got and all of the kids. Their items.
Thank you.
You and John both sent people to Indianapolis yesterday.
2 of my 3rd grade teachers and I went down to Indianapolis yesterday for the Ivory celebration.
Yeah, none of them were able to go, but
So,
we were invited.
We had 2 schools that were ready to be recognized, and that might come out later in our meeting today.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Oh, 5th grade.
Oh,
Same question.
I mean, for me, it's been wonderful because I haven't had them in my building
Right.
for 2 years. And so I haven't had to go between buildings. And, Kim Harris hasn't had to go between 2 buildings. My special teachers.
What are you doing with all your extra time?
Somehow it's full. My special teachers, well, in all 3 buildings, we've been using our special teachers this year to do some help with our wind time. We each have a different name for it, but just that remediation and enrichment time. My building does the entire building first thing in the day for 40 minutes. So every adult in the building has a group of kids in. And so to have that extra time with the specialist teachers, they've been a huge part of that. Even some days I get a group. Tomorrow I get to work with a group of kindergartners. So it's exciting. But yeah, so it's a little different for me now. We were kind of used to not having a building.
Thanks.
But I do miss my 5th grade teachers a lot.
And you can always visit.
Yes, I ran into one at Costco the other day.
All right. So it's going good for the most part. Some craziness being a new principal. I mean, obviously I was there in January, but now that it's my building, just putting systems in place. Our theme of the year is Be the One. So at the end of the year we voted. So we want to be the one for kids and each other, and we want to be the one to make a difference. So that's really our focus this year. We have a lot of needs in our building. We have a lot of, I think we're up to like almost 40 LRE kids at Oak Hill, and several that are being evaluated. So we are fully staffed with our NISIC team, which is phenomenal. And I think it's a very strong team, which has been great. So we're trying to just put systems in place and help kids in every way that we can. So we're recognizing kids. One of our things is we're doing like a spot on ticket with kids when we catch them like being the one for someone else. So it's not just like a teacher staff theme, it's like a whole school theme. So that's been fun. And my new Dean of Students, Dana Eisen, she's kind of overseeing our PBIS initiatives. And she's gonna pull kids and do donuts with the dean on Fridays with them when they are nominated for that. So she's been amazing. Also helping the intermediate school, but like honestly, she's just really good at her job. Like baptism by fire for sure, but she's getting it. So I'm super happy. The teachers and the staff at Oak Hill are just second to none, in my opinion. Like there's not a hesitation. I mean, with the kind of a little bit being a little bit shorter on assistance, obviously with not getting the referendum, we had to make some adjustments with their schedules, but there's never a day that I don't have like 5 or 6 extra staff just out helping with car duty, whether they're assigned or not. And just very much like, Liz, what do you need? What do you need? We'll do car duty. You go call parents. You go do this. Like, they're just so great, and they just love kids. They do. They're the best. So the family atmosphere there at Oak Hill is just amazing. And I think that the parents feel it, the kids feel it, and the staff feels it too. We are also doing fly time. We call it fly time, so focused learning for you. So it's a little bit of an adjustment with our specials teachers pushing in to support. They have different grade levels that they're working with. There's a learning curve, but they're not hesitating. They're like, all right, what do you need us to do? We've had some hard conversations about what's working, what's not working. I feel like we're focusing on instruction much heavier right now than maybe what we were doing at the end of last year, because our PLC time is very, very focused. I do like I'm meeting with K through 2 on Tuesdays, 3 through 4 on Thursdays. And when I'm not meeting, they're meeting in their grade level teams. I feel like I'm actually getting to have really good, meaningful conversations with the teachers. And some of them are like, Liz, we're not ready to move our kids around. Like, we're doing the remediation, but within our classrooms, and we're pulling our enrichment. I'm like, that's okay. Like, we have to respond to what our kids need and what they're ready for. If they're just learning routines and you're not ready to throw them in another classroom, we may not be there. Let's set like small, achievable goals. I mean, we have so much room to grow at Oak Hill. We're not happy with our literacy scores right now. I think it's a problem in Indiana in general, but like we're motivated. We made 4% growth in math. We're gonna get our goals this year and make that growth. Like, that's what we want. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like, I tell my teachers, like, your job is to love kids. You're gonna get them where they need to go, but at the end of the day, we want to love them. We want to teach them to love learning and to want to be here at school. That's what matters, right? No kid comes back and says, don't you remember when I passed my standardized test? They come back and they say, don't you remember when you made a difference in my life and you were an amazing teacher who supported me? So we don't ever want to lose sight of that at Oak Hill. Of course, we want to make gains too. Back to school night, it was my first experience at the elementary level. I thought it went fine. I don't know, there was a lot of kids, huge turnout. We had Oakley popping around, the kids loved him. Maybe we'd stagger it, I don't know, I'd probably have to get feedback from my teachers on that. But I feel like it went fine. So that's okay. Any questions?
So you obviously didn't have much time with 5th graders, but same thing with like out.
Yeah, I didn't get a lot of time with the 5th graders. And honestly, we didn't have a whole lot of behavior concerns with 5th grade at the time that I was there, because I feel like we were kind of like senioritis, right? Like, we're on our way out of here. So it's kind of interesting now as I've talked to 4th grader, like, we do a PBIS kickoff in the beginning of the year, and I've emphasized them, like, you're the leaders of the building now. Like, you are the big kids who are making the decision. So it's kind of nice seeing them take a leadership role, because they're going to do our robotics and our math bowl and our mentors, and they're going to do all of those things, which I think is going to be good for them, but also keeping in mind that they're still little, right? We did reconfigure our classrooms, so we kind of had like a 3rd and 4th grade hall, a 2nd grade hall, a 1st grade hall, and the kindergarten LOE hall, and special ed hall. So I feel like that flow is a lot better, because like last year we had like 1 2nd grade classroom off on an island. So I feel like that flow is better. We're still sitting at almost 500 kids at Oak Hill. I mean, we lost kids, but we still have a lot. So I feel like those classrooms are gonna get filled up before we know it. I mean, really, which is the goal, right? I mean, the growth. So, but I feel like I'm starting to get in the groove a little bit. Definitely had my challenges and my highs and my lows being a new principal, but trying to lead with my heart and do what's best for kids.
You survived and you came back.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming. This is just a nice way for us to hear kind of just that beginning of the year, get a moment to touch base with you guys and see what's happening at the school. I know it's extra time out of your evenings, but thank you for your information you gave us.
And let us know if there's anything you could use from us, or if there's anything that you have coming up that you would like to invite us to. I know that, I think all of us have kids in most of the buildings, but we all like to go out and see what's going on and how things are happening.
Well, we have our color run on Wednesday and everybody wants to come.
Oh, that sounds fun. What is that?
It's our PTO fundraiser. So we raised over almost $11,000. Our goal is 20, and if they get 20, then they get to slime me. But it's color.
I'll be there for that. Let me know.
So the kids are literally going to do a color run, like.
Oh, where like you run and you like wear all white and they.
Well, they wear play clothes, but
Yeah.
we'll throw the color and. Yeah.
Before
that's
the half day
fun.
let out? With,
There's 2 different groups, but yeah, it's just in that 3-hour day, the half day. So it should be fun.
That's fun.
yeah, that is fun.
Yeah.
All right, so invite us to that.
Well, don't
The
feel
back.
like you need to stay. We just have business stuff to get through, nothing too crazy. So one good presentation coming up later, but don't feel like you need to stay.
Thank you. I might go because I've got 2 littles at home.
Exactly.
I would run.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
You got anything else for us?
I do. Mr. Blackman in the back has something he would like to share with you.
Oh, no.
Oh, good news. So, do have some very good news. We were recently, got some information that we've received a substantial grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, Community-Oriented Policing Services Department, the COPS grant, for the School Violence Prevention Program. It's called the SVPP. It's a competitive grant where they look at providing funding for evidence-based school safety programs. A lot of schools look at this for technology, for things that help with first responders. We put together an application for this, and I'm happy to say that we were accepted. We are one of 5 districts in Indiana that got this. I was just looking at the notes here. It was a highly competitive grant across the nation. There was 1,008 applications from 49 states and 1 territory. We asked for the maximum amount in the grant, which is $500,000. So we are receiving that total amount, along with, there is a 25% match that we do have to provide, but we were able to get that whole amount. We requested the amount to be able to update our camera systems across all our schools. The camera systems that we've had in place, we have been kind of ahead of the game for a number of years. Dr. Kleefish and I put many of those systems in while he was still here. But we've been updating them as we go over the years. But there's been a lot of incredible improvements in that area, especially in our county. If you're familiar with at the Lake County Sheriff's Department, they do have a real-time center where they are monitoring all kinds of things that are happening across the county. And one of their initiatives has been to connect with the schools to be able to get access to our camera systems in the event of an emergency. They actually approached us several years ago. We were the first school that they wanted to work with because they heard our camera systems were more advanced, or that we were very open to working on that. So we've been working towards this for quite a while, and this will actually give us the ability to give the Sheriff's Department immediate real-time access to our cameras, to audio feeds, maps of the buildings, everything they need to be able to do. This will impact all of our buildings, including exteriors, and also provides, the system that we're looking at does provide analytics for things like concealed weapons detection, they can see that, and also suspect tracking. So we'll actually be able to, as somebody walks across the screen, they'll be able to click on that individual and be able to watch everywhere that they've gone throughout the buildings and follow them all the way through. So it's really exciting. We're very happy to receive this. Hanover received it a couple of years ago and did a camera upgrade. We went up, Stacy Heems and I went up and visited them. and they had nothing but great things to say about that system. And ours will be actually a little bit more advanced because it's a little newer, so very excited.
That is
Congratulations.
awesome.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work you put into that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Another example of how Tri-Creek's safety department is being progressive in our approach to school safety. And then I have one final thing. We have a community member that's been joining us for quite some time, I think since like February of this year. And one of the beginning board meetings that she attended, she was really inspired when we started announcing or approving international trips. And so Mrs. Tuttle has coordinated through the Tri-Creek Education Foundation an international travel grant for up to 50% of the cost to one needy student for international travel. And so they'll be taking it for a spin run with the upcoming Peru trip. So just wanted to highlight Mrs. Tuttle, community member doing good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for always being here, being involved, and finding that spot. Thank you.
Both of you.
Is that all?
That's all I have.
Okay. Board member reports. Anybody have one today?
Not today.
Okay. Regular business consent. Approve the meetings of the minute held on Thursday, September 12th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Personnel report. Approve the personnel report dated September 26th, 2024. Do I have a motion? I'll second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Business operations, ratify the action of the administration in approving the overnight athletic trip for the Lowell High School volleyball team to participate in the Goshen individual or invitational at Goshen High School, September 20th to 21st. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the overnight trip.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Number 2, award the 2024 school bus bid to Curlin Bus Sales Thomas of Silver Lake, Indiana for the purchase of 6 78-passenger Thomas-built school buses and 2 48-passenger school buses with a wheelchair lift. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I do have a couple questions. When I was here, it was 10 years originally mandatory rotation, and then it went up to 12. Is it still 12 years?
It is still 12, but we're taking a look at mileage because we do put a lot of miles in there.
Absolutely. That's a big
And
factor.
we are replacing between that 10 and 12 year.
Okay.
We tend to select our buses on which ones, just on their maintenance records and all of that.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so the 2 48 passengers that are on there with the wheelchair lifts are starting to give us some problems. So
Right,
we
you
are
don't have to-
replacing those a little early, a year or 2 early. I do want to caution that when I say a year or 2 early, when you order these buses now, they're 16 to 22 months out
Yep.
for production before we receive them. So what you're approving tonight, we may not see for 2 years.
Right.
We're ordering now 2 years worth of buses on one docket, just so that we can get this ball rolling. And that's part of our,
Proactive approach.
yes, part of our general obligation bond, to get this going.
Sounds good to me.
What
Thank you.
is, like, if you don't have this number, that's completely understandable. What's the average, like, mileage that we're getting to before we know it's time to?
Over 100,000, it's right in between 120 and 130, I believe, is where we are. But with these extended ordering times, our mechanics are gonna do what they can to keep them rolling.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
I do wanna say we're getting the extended warranty that's in there too. So 10-year extended warranty on the engine and 7 years on the trans. And the camera systems that we've had always before with stop arm cameras front and back for either side of the sign, and I think it's 5 on the 78 passenger and 4 on the 48 passenger as far as cameras. So we're pretty well outfitted on this.
Great, thank you. Number 3, approve the recommendation to dispose of various outdated books and DVDs from Lowell High School Library. Do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Sorry.
Aye.
Dispose, how do we, like, are we tossing them, do they get donated?
There was a note in the memo there that says we're intending to invite the public to take a look at them if they'd like to, so we'll have a day that we'll advertise. That if they want to come and grab a 1999 encyclopedia or something like that, they're more than welcome to, so we will, and we have a lot of DVDs that we're just not using, so a lot of that stuff, so yes, we will advertise that. Okay.
I'm glad you're doing that. At least the taxpayers know that if they want it.
Any other? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, business operations, accept the donation from Randy and Dana Boguthy of a 2017 Chrysler Pacifica valued at approximately $8,700 for the Lowell High School Vocational Automotive Program. A motion?
Make a motion?
I'll
second.
Motion in a second. Any further discussion? I'm sure the auto program is so grateful for your beer.
It died on me. I didn't want a new car.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, curriculum, instruction, and assessment, presentation of student academic performance for 2023-24.
Right. Good evening, everybody, board members, good evening, guests tonight. It's that time of year as we hit the fall with the updates that you get about the school year running, that we have a chance to not just look forward, but also kind of reflect on where we were when all of that performance academic data came in from the previous school year in 23-24. It's also the time of year where the next board agenda item is to approve school improvement plans that each of the building principals have submitted that are in your board docs. In the best case scenario, what we strive for is that the academic data that you're going to hear about tonight informs the school improvement plans that you see so that we're moving towards uniform goals at the school district. When we began kind of before the board meeting started today, we kind of joked that many of our board meetings have been about like the massive construction projects that are happening. We get a lot of updates from Skillman and Gibraltar, and we talk about the phases of those projects, and sometimes we lose sight that like we're in the business of meeting the needs of these students and providing the absolute best education to them that we can. And one of those ways that we can monitor the effectiveness of our curriculum, our instructional practices, the programs that we have in place, all of the wraparound supports inside the classroom and outside the classroom is kind of just looking at that data that we get on an annual basis. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is most certainly not to overwhelm, because you're going to see a lot of numbers up there from a lot of different sources, but it's to hopefully give you a comprehensive overview of those things that do inform our Department of Education pre-application that goes to justify our federal grant expenditures, the school improvement plans that you see there, but also the investments that we make in professional development, professional learning, curriculum resources, all of those things that are truly the wraparound supports that provide the whole child-student experience. So we begin kind of with that vision statement, right? A recognized leader for high achievement and exceptional growth. So we want to strive for that. So in all of these different data points that we provide that come from the state, I'm going to give you some kind of barometer for where we are in terms of Tri-Creek School Corporation, but also our neighboring districts and in the state of Indiana as well, because to be a recognized leader, you want to do some comparisons, just like we do with athletics. I've used this anecdote many times. I've asked the teacher's permission, who is also one of our football coaches, if I could use it, and he's always given me the blessing. Oftentimes when we present this data, we look at kind of Tri-Creek School Corporation in comparison to a Crown Point School Corporation, where 3,300 kids make up their high school, which is almost the entire size of us. And when some of his colleagues were saying, well, we're never going to be Crown Point, he said, well, do you think that that's the pump-up speech I give the first night of the game? Like, they're so much bigger than us, we're never going to top them. Just go out there and do your best. He's like, that's not what it equates to. He's like, our kids are walking in the building just like those other kids. Why can't we see ourselves a rival academically just as we would athletically? And he offered that probably 4 years ago, and I've used it many times because I think it's the right attitude of, even if they don't look like us in size, even if they don't look like us when it comes to socioeconomics, even if they don't look like us in terms of diversity, like, we still want to be a recognized leader with those who are comparable to us and those who could be an athletic rival as well, or your neighbor just in the district. So, in the vein of kind of guiding principle under continuous improvement, this is a threshold for us to kind of continually come back to at the beginning of the year, hold ourselves to a higher standard, celebrate, which we're going to do a lot of where there's some exceptional bright spots from last year, but also seek those opportunities to grow and provide solutions and strategies for what we're going to do to address those different areas of need. So where we start off with, this is the first time presenting on our new board television, so I'll probably do a little bit of standing so that we can call attention to specific data points. This is iRead. You'll notice that I took the 3 off of there because beginning this year, iRead will not be optional for second graders, but we're actually giving it to all second graders across the state. So the iRead assessment is a second grade and third grade assessment now, which is new. Previously, we had opted in to give it to our second graders because it was a great way to kind of see where they were, what we could do to provide interventions as they make that shift to third grade. But now it's for all schools, starting this year. This goes back to 2021. These are our pass rates for both the initial spring test and the summer retest combined. So they get the chance to take that test twice in a given school year. Within this, you see that we were at 94.8 last year, dropped just slightly to 92.2%. I'm going to talk a little bit on a final bullet about good cause exemptions and some kind of factors that influence that. 2 celebrations that were kind of stolen from me is that we had only 1 student at Lake Prairie out of every that took it in third grade that did not pass, and we only had 2 students at Three Creeks Elementary School. So that's why they were recognized and invited down to the State House for their exceptional iRead pass percentage, because the state of Indiana has set a goal for 2027 that 95% of the population should be passing iRead. As we think about kind of some of our neighbors, last year we only had 1 of our neighboring school districts that was ahead of us. This year, when we look at those in Lake and Porter County, when I think of kind of our geographical peers, Valparaiso was ahead of us at 94.4, Munster at 93.8, Duneland at 93.1, and Crown Point at 92.4. Any other school that's not mentioned there would have been below the 92.2 percentage mark. Interestingly, last year, and I think that this is significant, is that we gave iRead to 100% of our grade 2 students. 57% of them at the district already passed it. That means they don't have to take it this year. They are already good to go. So we already have a 57% pass rate going in with all of those other students not yet taking the assessment. So that's a great number. That is up 3 percentage points from the prior year for second grade students. I already referenced the IDOE goal for 95% by 2027. We've talked here a lot about the initiatives around the science of reading, endorsements, literacy endorsements for teaching staff. There's a lot of work because we're recognizing not just locally, but across the state, across the country, that literacy is an area of focus, an area of need. And that is why the department has put such emphasis on that. Tomorrow, all of our families in K through 4 are going to get a letter about iRead testing and the new retention law. I think we've talked about it briefly at a board meeting earlier in the summer. I just bring this up because good cause exemptions are allowable for our students. However, they do not come off of the percentage. You're still held accountable to them. The reason I mention that is that we did have 10 students that qualified for good cause exemptions, but they did not factor into that percentage. We're still held accountable to them. I wanted to share the board meeting tonight just so that we have it public of what would be the new qualifiers for a good cause exemption in case you guys are asked, because the retention law does say that in consideration of not passing the iRead assessment, the school district would have that stronger consideration to retain a child unless, here are some of the different reasons why you would not retain. A student who had been previously retained in third grade, a student with an intellectual disability whose IEP or case conference committee specifies that promotion to the next grade level is appropriate, a student who is an identified English learner who has received services for fewer than 2 years and has an ILP committee that determines promotion to the next grade level is appropriate, a student who has achieved a performance level of proficient or above proficient on the third grade iLearn mathematics assessment, or a student who has received 2 or more years of intensive intervention in reading aligned to the science of reading and has retained more than once during kindergarten, first, or second grade. So those are the qualifiers for the good cause exemption. They would still be accountable to us, but that would allow them to move on to the next grade level. Obviously, all of that would be documented through meetings, conversations with building principal, teachers, and families. But that is new. So this is new law in place now in terms of retention, and that's why this letter will go home to all of those families tomorrow, in case you're asked about it. Any questions about IREAD, good cause exemption, or retention before we shift?
If they're not passing, if they don't pass, they now have to do summer school, correct?
Yes.
And then is there an opportunity for them to test again? Like, let's just say it was a really bad result for a kid, it was a one-off. Is there an opportunity for them to retest before the next year?
You can. So we already have, not summer school, but after-school tutoring in place before this became a requirement. So leading up to the first IREAD window, I work with the principals. We look at 2 data points for the most recent NWEA, and we identify with a white paper report of likelihood to pass IREAD. Those students who fall below the threshold are invited to attend a 5-week, 4-day-a-week after-school tutoring program for 1 hour a day leading up to their first attempt. Obviously, if we've got second graders, of those, 43%, they're immediately considerations because we can look at their reports and see if they are at risk of not passing. They get invited to it. So that's the first round of it. They then test. Many of those kids will pass. We then do a second round after we get the IREAD results of 4 weeks, 5 days a week, leading up to the very end of our school year in May. Those are the DNP students. So they're getting a second round of tutoring. That then allows them to take it, we usually do it like the second to last school day while they're actually here. But the window continues through the summer. So while we haven't used it before, now that the law requires them to have access to a free summer reading program, we would be able to give them an additional test in that summer window.
For third graders only.
Third graders, yeah, so you wouldn't do that for your second graders.
Right, then you still give them summer school, but they don't take it again.
So
Because
a
they'll have a
second
chance to
grader
take it
is
in
now
third
held
grade.
accountable to taking summer school if they don't pass it?
You offer it.
You offer it to them,
Okay.
but they're gonna get the chance to take IREAD as a third grader. They don't lose
Right.
that.
I mean, it seems like that's a way to just move that testing standard up a little bit.
Right.
With that,
Right.
that's not fair. Okay, cool,
Yep.
thank you.
Good questions, thank you. Okay, so now we get to a loaded big board of data. So we are looking at iLearn Math, administered in April into early May of last school year. On the left-hand side here, you will see beginning these first 3 columns are your overall results for Tri Creek School Corporation. And then this is specifically unpacking the middle school, grades 3 through 5, 6 through 8. You have your years here that lead to that top column of 21 through 24 for each of our grade level bands, your pass percentage, and where that falls within the state rank. So we want to see, obviously, as recognized leader, how are we shaking out? Because just being at or slightly above your state average doesn't make you a recognized leader. So even though we see here in grades 3 through 5, a 62.5% pass rate, 67.7, and a jump to 71.7, there's great growth there. What's most impressive is you see that as a district, that 71.7% for our 5th grade, for that was 3rd percent in the state of Indiana. Top 3%. That's incredible for our kids. And you can see the way that those numbers factor in as we start to unpack from 3 through 5 and look at the individual grades 3, 4, and 5, where the results come from. So last year, our grade 3 students in math were at 73%, about 20% above the state average. Grade 4, 68%, about 20% above the state average. In grade 5, 74%, 34% above the grade average. Something that you have to see on this sheet. When you slide all the way over here to grade 5, these rankings are the total schools that were published on the DOE website that had results to share for that given test. These are really incredible numbers to be top 10% in the state of Indiana. What you see here is our 5th graders, 3 elementary schools combined, had the 4th highest score in the state of Indiana. That's top 1%. That's not top 4%. Like, we were the 4th highest 5th grade cohort in the state of Indiana for 5th grade last year.
Well, and that group of kids the year prior had had a little decrease.
That's right. So you can follow them. What you're looking at there is I can see where those kids were in third grade, where they're in the 13th percent in the state. You can see that they go to the 12th, that they go to the 1st. But I mean, that number right there, that really stands out. You've heard me talk a lot about a district that I really admire and have learned a lot from, and that's Brownsburg, one of the suburbs of Indianapolis. They were a major influence when we were looking at adopting a math curriculum and doing it well because their scores were stellar. That's the kind of number that's going to put us up there with the Brownsburgs.
Did these fifth graders start in kindergarten with the start of that curriculum?
They would have, yeah, they did, but we had it even before them.
Okay.
So actually, when my daughter was in first grade,
Oh.
and she's in ninth now, so this is actually our 7th full year of everyday math going on to our 8th.
Okay.
Yeah, actually 8th going on to 9th, now that I say that. 8th full year going on to our 9th of this math curriculum. So those are incredible numbers, right? And with every one of those, you can see us getting even below that 10% threshold, which I mean, that's where you get to the recognized leader status. Just below that, you can see our 6th grade class. 5th grade set a very high bar in 2023. They were in the top 4% there. You can see that there is a substantial dip in grade 6, where they were 38% in the state there. As we go to 7th grade, 28%, 8th grade, 44%. So we have questions like, what is happening? What's the divide in the curriculum of what's working clearly well in K through 5? What tier 1 all student adjustments need to be made so that there are no drops or deficits of that nature at our middle grade levels? At the end of the presentation, we'll look at our school improvement plan, which talks to some of those numbers for the middle school. And we also talk about some of the professional development we're doing specifically to math to kind of see where is that divide from 5th grade to 6th grade that we're seeing. We recognize that at state, you can see the state average takes a pretty substantial dip, but what we're more interested in is why is our state ranking taking that dip when we get to the 6th grade level. Any questions or comments specific to math? And this is just iLearn data.
They still have that same math curriculum at the middle school, correct?
So they're only in the third, this is the 3rd year, so they've had it for 2 years. This is the 3rd year of implementation there.
And is it the same as the elementary?
It's not the same, so everyday math does top out, but it is through McGraw-Hill and it's called Reveal. And it has the same authorship of University of Chicago, so it does supposedly extend beyond that with the same ideology of spiraling to algebra and algebra 2 readiness. So I do think that you're seeing some numbers here that are reflective of early implementation, but Mr. Anderson has sat in on PLCs with them. The work towards common formative assessments, the work towards aligning their maps to the iLearn checkpoints. I think that that's going to bring about the changes that we want to see and start to close the gap from the elementary level to the middle levels.
So curriculum-wise, we're thinking it's okay to just...
I think that since we're only 2 years in, you usually are looking at like a 3 to 5 year impact. I want to see higher numbers from it still. So I don't want to say that with surety with a stamp right now because I think that's a part of the evaluation as we go through these iLearn checkpoints that I'll talk about and as we look at the way that they're hopefully growing this year after a 3rd year of implementation.
Does there ever become a time when we say that this isn't working? So
Yeah.
where is that? Because you can see that like we might be getting to that 3rd year where an entire 6th, 7th, and 8th grade cohort goes through, and then that's going to flop over to high school scores.
So when we do our curriculum review, it still follows the traditional 6-year cycle that is like predates me. I don't know how far that goes back. I don't mean to look at you, Dr. Cleafish, but so
No offense taken.
most of them for cost savings when we used to charge TBR and fees, we would do a 6-year commitment, divide the cost of the materials over those years to recoup our costs. Now that we're living in a day and age where we do not collect TBR and fees and we're waiting to see what the per pupil reimbursement is for your entire district, you're seeing more textbook companies allowing us to do like a 1-year commitment. Obviously, they're going to push you on 6 years. They're going to give you tremendous cost savings when you do a 6-year. So that was a 6-year commitment with it. It is paid off at this point because we weren't collecting anything we only did for those first years. So you could move on, but typically you will let a cycle of adoption of a tier 1 curriculum go through that 6 years unless you see colossal problems where you're like, we need to make a shift.
I would consider we're approaching colossal, and I would definitely like to keep an eye on that, and not test that 6-year line if we continue to see numbers like that.
Absolutely.
I think there are 3 things that jump out in my mind that aren't told up there. One is the amount of instructional time in math, 5th grade going to 6th grade. I think we definitely have to increase the amount of instructional time. That's happening this year with the intermediate school. So it'll be interesting to see how the impact it has on 6th grade this year with that additional math block. So that's 1. 2, how we schedule kids. We saw a trend that kids were starting to become tracked based by ability level, and that is not best practice unless you get into your honors levels. 3, the intervention programs that are taking place now with built-in time to have that tier 2 intervention should produce some changes in these results.
So we should see a flip-flop that next year.
We should absolutely see growth. And I'll steal some of the thunder. We did bring in a consultant who has experience with the Department of Education in the math department, is working independently now and has really mastered the changes of the reduced standards in math, the iLearn checkpoints, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and has really helped districts to make intentional shifts in the scope and sequence of their curriculum, the order in which they're teaching those math skills. So instead of necessarily saying, because the book has it outlined this way, we're going to follow it, but instead saying, like, what is the most appropriate unit now, based on what kids' needs are, accelerating and looking forward and not looking backwards. Those shifts and that opportunity of partnering with him, that just began as only met with them one time. I would also want to see with his guidance and the utilization of the resources from the DOE to better align to this updated and forthcoming assessment for 25-26, that we should see growth as a result of all of those things.
Hopefully this curriculum this textbook allows that to happen.
It does. It does.
Conveniently, because I've been in districts where it doesn't. You have to follow it, or if you skip around, there's half the questions are review that they may not have had by the curriculum app. So this
the good news about having Canvas as a management system and having all of that is the custom, like that's one of the criteria on every rubric we've got materials for, is like, can we customize units of study, problems, assessments? And all of these can, and you can manage them in the modules of your management system.
Is there any collaboration between the lower grades, math teachers, and the upper grades? Where they're saying this works, this doesn't work?
Not nearly as much as I'd like, Dr. Cleafish, to be honest. What I do think is very, which has got good potential, is bringing 5th and 6th together is that bridge year when you really start to get into the heavy algebra skills. Seeing that as a bridge building at the intermediate school, they are absolutely working much more in tandem as 5th, 6th grade teachers for the first time because they are a part of the same school. I think that has a lot of potential because that's such a pivotal stage in math readiness.
And it shows in the numbers up there.
Right.
And now there's more opportunity to do that with our early release dismissal Wednesdays.
Absolutely.
All the teachers having that kind of free time. October 2nd.
So with that, we want to look kind of comparatively again. This is just math. So this is collectively Tri-Creek School Corporation, 4 years of data. The pass percentage when you look at all of the grade levels, 3 through 8, you can see a slight decrease from 23 to 24. You can see that our state ranking percentage remained the same at the 11%. What I provide over here is anybody above the line are our geographic peers that are above us. So you can see Duneland and Munster are at the top, both at 66.3, Valparaiso at 61.4, Crown Point at 58. Tri-Creek comes in there. We then see Hanover, I put 2 in there of schools that would be directly below us, Right below would be Hanover at 55.1 and Lake Central at 49.9. So you get kind of some comparative percentages from those neighbors. If you don't see a neighbor that you're curious about, that would likely mean that they fell below Lake Central. Okay. Another data point to look at is obviously iLearn is once a year, spring, summative, 100% grade level standards. This is our NWEA data. It is overwhelming to see all of those numbers in the grid, but I wanted to keep them there because there are some specific columns that are really worthy of note. But I do believe the visual is most telling. We call this the diamond chart with NWEA. Important to know that NWEA is an assessment that is student adaptive. 80% of the questions that they see are grade level. The other 20% are below grade level or above grade level, depending on how you perform. It's very much like climbing a ladder. If I get a question right, I go up a rung. If I get a question right, I go up a rung. If I get a question wrong, I go down a rung. You do that for about 40 to 48 questions until you find the sweet spot, which becomes what is called your RIT score, your achievement score. From that, NWEA looks at the millions of students who scored that RIT at that time of year and says, kids like you at the 50th percentile typically grow X amount of points from now until spring. So they create a goal for you. You then are able to see what percentage of your students met or exceeded their anticipated growth goal from fall of the school year, which we give it right at the beginning, the first 3 weeks of the year, to the end, final 4 weeks of the school year. Every diamond that you see, if I were to intersect it with my pen, represents where they are targeted to be based on fall performance. The bar graph represents our actual. So if I were to intercept, bless you, if I were to intercept that diamond, I would have met my growth. Anything above the middle of the diamond means I have surpassed it. So the higher that bar goes above the diamond, the greater the number is that these kids are achieving and growing at a high level. There's one grade level there in particular that really stands out, right? That's tremendous. So when you look at that 4th grade for math, to see that this was their growth target and they were way up here, I know that that growth percentile was in the 99th. We were looking at those teachers and saying, what did we do at 4th grade that we can replicate? Because something was working there. And we learned a little bit from our elementary principals today, talking about win time or fly time, where students are not seen as just mine in my classroom, but collectively a part of a whole grade. How can I start to say that if Lisa and I are 3rd grade teachers, rather than saying these are my kids and those are your kids, saying they are ours and dividing them up into groups and offering that differentiated what I need instructional time to either enrich or to offer intervention as needed. That's part of every schedule that we have there. And I'll tell you, talking with many of our 4th grade teachers, they were doing this even before we kind of made it something that we were all going to commit to. They were piloting and dabbling. I would say a big part of that is related to what they were doing there. You can see similar tremendous growth for 5th grade, and you know that they had the 4th highest score in the state. These numbers here are tremendous. So when it says the school conditional growth percentile, that means of other school grade level bands, what percentile, 0 to 99, did you achieve at? You can see that from 2nd grade through 6th grade, we were in the 99th percentile of all schools. That's crazy. It was actually, I'll tell Lisa because she can vouch for this. When we saw this, we called NWEA because it happened twice, and we said there's got to be something wrong with the algorithm. Like, we can't be that good. And like, we've checked everything. We've checked your windows. We've checked your administration. Like, you are. Like, your data is legitimized. And I think that when you see some of those top 10 percentage increases at the state level on iLearn, it just validates that on this growth measure, our kids are doing exceptionally well on math assessment and math instruction. So that's the diamond chart for math. We now shift to ELA. ELA identified as an area of focus for Tri-Creek School Corporation. So as you see here, same format as before, where all 3 through 5th graders are here. We see that they are the top 8% in the state. You see that a part of that is a major gain of the top 5% for 5th grade there. Not below the top 10%, more hovering around the top 15% for each of those grade level bands. You'll see something similar when we get to our middle grades, where those state ranking percentages jump into the 30s. And we had 1 year here where we saw a substantial shift from 28th percentile to the 52nd. Now these are not the same kids, right? But these are. Something happened there. And we've gone back and worked with the English department, with the principal of the middle school. And what I want to commend them for is like nobody wants to see those numbers when they get published at the end of June, early July. But as we were starting to see the preliminary data roll in even before the school year ended, that team immediately said, here are things that we can do, that we can address this immediately. We were doing work around curriculum maps. We were doing work around the instructional resources that were in place and training for those staff members. It was never about excuses for why this was, but it was kind of like, what are the solutions we can do so that we can not see that type of a dip from a cohort of students again. Some of the things that Mr. Anderson spoke to about the tracking of students, about the way that we're meeting the needs of our special education population, the team structures that are there, the instructional time, all of those factors, just as much as they would weigh in on math, absolutely weigh in on ELA as well. What I can say is when we look at the individual student reports here in grade 6 and 7 and 8, and you look at some of like the item specifications, something that we all know, and this isn't unique to middle grades, but even as you get into 3rd, the complexity of text passages is getting very, very challenging for our kids. So the word that we hear a lot is like stamina, and you all have children who are somewhere in those age bands. The ability and willingness to sit, focus, and digest and comprehend a passage before even trying to answer a question about it is a major deficit against us. And that's not just our kids, that's all kids. So looking at a very intentional evidence-based approach to hit the different pillars of literacy from the ground up through our 8th grade levels is clearly a 3-year goal of ours. So when I talk about the ELA curriculum review, it's an obvious need, not just at the higher level, because in order to get these scores higher, we have to work backwards and develop those phonics skills, those phonemic awareness skills, the vocabulary skills, their comprehension skills, and their fluency skills. And we have a 3-year plan to address each of those pillars, beginning with our primary teachers and working all the way up through middle school as well. One of the things that's highlighted in yellow in that letter that's going home regarding I Read is kind of a beg and a plead for Mr. Deal that if you can do anything with your child, please read with them or ask them to read 30 minutes a day. And that is one of the most impactful things they can do outside of the school day to develop these literacy skills is independent reading of 30 minutes. And that's not something that requires parental support per se. It can be chosen based on interest, and it is profoundly impactful. So reading and doing some more reading is the best kind of thing you can do outside of the school day. Any questions or comments about ELA by grade level? Here's the overall district data combining 3 through 8. You can see a slight dip there in the overall state rank of 11% to 13%, 53.6 to 52.1. The gray line there again represents our geographic peers. So you can see the leader again is Munster at 66.5, with Duneland, Valparaiso, and Lake Central above us. We are currently leading Crown Point and Hanover when it comes to collective ELA scores. The diamond chart, as you would expect, does not look as strong as you see with math. You're going to see direct correlation to some of those dips by cohort grade levels, because where we had diamonds that were all being surpassed in math, we have some that are much closer and even some that are not meeting those. I will say that as we start to get into these grade levels, the passages get longer, and you are answering more questions about those passages. and finding ways for students to be incentivized and motivated to do their best on NWA when they're like, I'm an 8th grader or a 7th grader. This isn't for a grade per se. I don't want to read a lengthy 500, 750 word passage and answer questions. I'm going to take my best because it's multiple choice and work my way through it. We know that students do that. That's not an excuse. We have to find a way to motivate them to make sure that the scores that they are churning out are reflective of what they can actually do. So we've already talked last spring when we started to see these numbers come in, how can we make sure that they're showing up for that and putting their best foot forward, even when they find something like a lengthy passage, multiple lengthy passages to be taxing, disengaging, not value added to them. We still want to make sure that they're showing up for those. Yeah.
Does technology play any role in this, meaning cell phones distracting them from reading a textbook?
Yes,
Absolutely. It correlates with the age.
Yeah, it's all everything. Right?
I had the opportunity at the beginning of the year when we had a keynote to highlight 2 books that speak to that evidentially, and I actually recommended one to our guests. The Anxious Generation is a book very much that speaks to like childhood anxiety and why it is the way it is right now, but living in a world where you have immediate gratification from a device whenever there is like the smallest semblance of boredom, rather than using your imagination, thinking creatively, picking up a book, it's immediately go to the phone, go to the device, etc. because of the accessibility there. It's not just anecdotal in this book, it speaks to dating back to 2008 to 2014, the profound decline in literacy rate in our country around the world because of this accessibility to immediate gratification and not just having time for thoughtfulness.
One of our teachers shared that book with me, and I have it on my nightstand to start reading. So.
It's an incredible book. It can make you take a step back as a parent and be like, my goodness, what did I do? It can make you step back as an educator and say, my goodness. But what I love is that after you get through 2/3 of it, the final third is actionables as for our legislators, for our educators, and for our families. And it's really incredible. The other one that I recommended was Reader Come Home. And Reader Come Home talks, Dr. Cleavage, to your question, a little bit about just this world that our kids live in now where much of what they read is on a device and not in paper. She took a lot of time to study the way in which the brain processes what she calls deep reading, which is what these assessments require them to be able to do. So rather than just skimming and getting the general gist, like what does it mean to read deeply and complexly, and therefore be able to think about what I've read and address questions. She talks about like how much of your life needs to be print-based and when you were allowed to graduate to a screen or digital based, because again, I associate this with like I can swipe left, I can go to all-time multitasking. I'm not reading deeply there. Mrs. Stoll would disagree. She might be the most voracious reader I know, and I think she can read just fine from it, but she graduated and passed the test to be able to read from her device. But those 2 books speak directly to your question with evidence rather than just kind of observation and anecdotally. Yeah.
I want to say I got one of those middle schoolers there, and he did tell me that they are just over it with that, the testing at that point, because we discussed these scores. Yeah. But I also see on the motivation side, and I hear when the kids are with us, they're comparing their scores. It's like competitive. So there can be motivation found somewhere because they're kind of using it to, show off or pick on each other about it. So they definitely have acknowledged they're not taking it seriously.
Well,
but
they just finished I Learn. We've done it both ways, where they take spring before I Learn and where they take it after to try and figure out what's best. But they've just finished 3 weeks of I Learn testing.
Yep.
And now here's your reading NWA that's going to take you another 3 hours. And
The other tricky part is notice that this growth scale goes in 4s, and the reason the diamond kind of goes down is the older you get, the less you grow, right? Like in kindergarten, you were growing and your potential for growth is tremendous. Here, you might have a student who is in that, doing really well and has like a 1 or 2 point growth goal for an entire year. I have a bad test, I might go back 4 days just by the standard measure of error alone. So because that growth goal is so low, your margin of error is lower, where here you've got a tremendous gap between where you start and where you finish because you're learning so much at a younger age. But correlation here, right, between NWEA and what we see on iLearn. This here combines both of our ELA and math together. So when you look collectively at grades 3 through 8, you can see where our state ranking is. It remained at the 11th percentile, about the same total pass percentage. But you can see here, the numbers drop a little bit. Those above us are Munster, Dumas, and Valparaiso. And we have the edge on Crown Point, Lake Central, and Hanover, of the same 6 schools. Science, unfortunately, there is no 23-24 data to share. Science put the new Indiana academic standards onto their assessment last year because they were the next gen science standards. And because of that, they had to go through the norming process. We've been told by the beginning or mid of October, we'll actually get to see what our science results are because the norming will be done at that point. So we'll know what the benchmarks are, and we'll know what those past proficiencies are. So we don't have anything for 4th, 6th, or biology at this time. Social studies saw a little dip last year. I remember talking about going from the 23rd to the 40th percent. We went back to where we were there. Obviously, at the 5th grade level, social studies is very much kind of an interdisciplinary lesson with ELA, where the heavy course-specific social studies work really begins at your middle grade. What I'm excited to see now is that because social studies is its own standalone class at the intermediate school where it will not be sacrificed by an intervention or just be interdisciplinary alone, but it'll be ELA and social studies, I expect to see an increase of that because of that carved out daily specific social studies instruction that wasn't a part of the elementary model.
Are they doing science as well at the 5th grade?
Yep.
So that might produce different results
For your
also for 6th
Well,
grade.
6th grade it's always been by itself though, and 4th grade will still be a part
Well,
of the
6th
elementary
grade,
model.
yes, but it felt like when Titus was in 5th grade that science didn't get touched on very much.
They
didn't have to get.
Just to clarify, so they don't test science in 5th grade, only 4th and 6th, so they skip 5th grade.
But they're
Yeah.
still getting the lesson
Yes.
independently now that they were not.
Correct. So they would be
Before.
more prepared for their 6th grade experience.
Yeah.
Yes, gotcha. I've shown you guys this a few times. We are a part of a pilot prior to the mandatory shift to the iLearn through year assessment, which comes in 25-26. We actually have given our first checkpoint as a part of the pilot, just finished them up last week in most of our schools. So what the checkpoints are a series of like 20 to 25 question progress monitoring assessments, giving 3 times a year with a small chunk of essential standards in math and ELA by grade level that should give you some idea of how your students are preparing for the ultimate summative that will come at the end. This summative, which we will not take until the spring of 2026, is a brand new iLearn. So it's cut back considerably, it's much fewer questions, and it will be re-normed. So because of that, you're really creating a new baseline at the district in the spring of 2026 with the new assessment. The good thing is we opted in for the pilot. I think 72% of the schools in the state of Indiana did, so that we could learn like what do these tests look like and what do the data reports look like and how they might inform our instructional planning. I'm gonna say that we are extremely disappointed. And I'm saying that because all of my colleagues are too. The score reports that are coming from this are very underwhelming. They bunch, so there are subheadings above clusters of standards. They, instead of aligning the questions and the performance to specific standards as we were told they were, are just bunching it under a heading. So you have no idea what specific standard or skill the student did well or did poorly on. It's a one-pager. It's really, really scary to me because we were told, all Indiana schools, that these would become kind of our formative assessment checkpoints, which would replace an NWEA. To think that the minimal amount of data that we've seen from Checkpoint 1 reports would replace a massive amount of information we get from NWEA is really nerve-wracking to me. And I'm hoping, as all of my other colleagues that serve in a similar role to me that I'm on a group with, we're like, there's gotta be something that we're not getting, because right now it is super minimal and a little bit, more than a little bit disappointing.
Are you able to communicate that to the oversight committee?
I have. My fear is that because it goes through a larger organization, Cambrian Assessments, like this is what it was designed to do. I think we were kind of promised that this would be the replacement of an NWEA or other schools that use like curriculum associates. Like it just does not have the level of detail of what a student can do, what they need enrichment on, what they need intervention on. Like it's so simplified and parsed back that I'm nervous about the level of detail.
It's
I
not
don't know.
really gonna help.
Lisa, you've seen it with your teachers. If there's anything you want to
Yeah, I mean, it's very, they don't even necessarily lump like standards together. So for instance, third grade math, they've lumped the standards, addition, subtraction, and money. Because money, and it's not even like adding and subtracting money. So they're not even standards that necessarily fit in the same standard group. They at least gave me a performance varies is the word they use for like all over the place, I guess. With standards, I think, okay, those are all number sense standards. We need to focus with these because I'm number sense. But when you have things like addition and subtraction and money,
where did they go wrong?
like those are two very different lessons that I need to teach. And
the idea behind them was you're going to get these very detailed reports because the same standards are going to be assessed here. You're going to be able to offer your interventions because you've got checkpoints. You're like, oh, they're struggling in these specific standards. We're going to do things to make sure that they don't struggle on it by the time they get to the spring. Because of that lack of detail, we still have to kind of see how
So
the
there's a
state
year
intends.
essentially a year between this becomes like official.
Yeah. So right now it's
And
just a pilot.
the pilot is intended to allow this feedback so they can tweak it?
I don't know. Because again, it's coming from a national organization, Cambrian Assessments. So I think the reports maybe are, but we're certainly going to use our voice to share concern about the removal of something that is tried and true like NWEA in favor of just having this.
It's better to be vocal than to be silent.
Right, so so this is probably something that as this continues over the next checkpoint that the other organizations need to be aware of so it can be properly lobbied.
Mm-hmm. And I can say, so I'm on a couple of different, like, whether it's curriculum instructional assessment or federal grant specials, like just a couple of email listservs where we meet virtually once a month or even once a week. And like it's blowing up right now because those who chose to administer early to learn, which is what we did, like it's alarming.
Did we do well?
No, but we kind of didn't expect to, and the reason being is that we weighed the option of like, the window is very large, so we assessed in math, and the math teacher's like, well, we haven't even taught these things. They're gonna bomb it because they haven't taught these standards yet. So there is an ideology like test at the very end of the window so you've maximized instructional time. We chose for checkpoint 1, recognizing that there's a spiral of skills and that there should be some exposure to it. Let's see what we get from the score reports as early as we can so that we can make informed decisions about what point in the window for 2 and 3 we would give it. I'm glad we did because I would not have been wanting to wait until November to find out that this was the score report we were going to get. So I'm glad we learned what we did early, but we will come back to the roundtable with our learning coordinators and talk about when do we want to administer and how in checkpoint 2 and 3, knowing this is the kind of individual score report we're going to get. Because you can retest too. So that was part of what was supposed to be exciting is that I can give checkpoint 1 the first 3 weeks, do intervention and remediation, and then give checkpoint 2 again, or checkpoint 1 again in 6 weeks and see if they've grown. Like, not with everybody, but just with whatever students I wanted to. But if that score report's not going to show us real growth, we don't want to lose instructional time for testing time if the testing doesn't inform instruction, right?
Right. I mean, various groups lobbying in regards to the diploma changes
Sure.
seem to have an effect. It seems like this might be another one of those scenarios.
I will be glad. I have at least 2 conversations, virtual calls, both with the state and these groups, these cohort of curriculum leaders. I'll be glad to share at the next meeting kind of what those conversations sound like.
Okay. And then maybe send that over to us so we
Sure.
can.
I'll even,
let our
I'll
board know.
wipe out a student name so you can see the simplicity of the score report too.
Cool.
Okay, this we take to the high school here. When we go to the high school, in 11th grade, they are taking the SAT. That, as you recall, is what replaced the graduation qualifying exam for our 11th grade students. These are our overall school reports. You can see school and district are the same because we just have one school. You can see the state average, and then they do separate public schools versus all schools, so your charters and your privates in there as well. This is the mean total score, so you can see that we're at 980, and the as a district with 937 as the total state average. Those are just kind of like larger numbers. What I have coming up is kind of the way that those break down a little bit. ELA, you can see this was comprehensive, so this was overall. You can see ELA, we were at 500. The state was at 478, 482 in all schools. This is, bless you, this is our ELA breakdown. So you'll see EBRW, evidence-based reading and writing. So that's what the ELA portion is for SAT now. So when you hear your children talk about the EBRW, evidence-based reading and writing. So it has these 4 buckets: information ideas, craft and structure, expression of ideas, standard English conventions that make up the entirety of the test. These are our students, so you can see where they scored in each of those specific bands. For us, our EBRW was a pass rate of 62.2%, top 16% in the state, which was tremendous growth from the 32% the previous year. Geographic leaders, these numbers go in the same order. So for Munster, they were the same as last year. They're at 79.7 when it comes to evidence-based reading and writing. What I meant by the mean was I looked at all of those Lake Porter County schools. Like I said, who was in the middle of the pack? Crown Point was almost smack dab in the middle for both ELA and math. They came in at 66.9%, so about 4% higher than us for ELA. With Munster, who has always led the pack with SAT, really high when it comes to that. On the flip side of the screen, you can see our math scores. There's the overall of a 481 above the 462 state. That factors into the 28.5%, which you're saying, like, how is that the top 18%? When you look at those state scores, math SAT scores are extraordinarily low percentage-wise. So even our geographic leader, Munster, their pass rate for math was 54.7%, and our median, Crown Point, was at 34.5%. So math scores overall in SAT for 11th graders considerably lower than what you see in ELA. And that's why a number where you have 28.5 can still be in the top 20%. More considerable growth there, almost 20 percentage points higher when it comes to state ranking from the previous year, where we were in the top 37%. The third and final number that you see there, this 33.1 and 53.3, that's when you do the composite of evidence-based reading, writing, and math together. And we were here at the 28.5. One thing that I have that's promising around this is that we've always had blueprints when it came to like iLearn or previously iStep that identified like Check Plus or priority standards. When it came to the graduating qualifying exams at the high school level, even before the SAT, there was never the amount of kind of communication or support or readiness around that test that we felt from the department. They are doing the exact same blueprint work for the SAT that they are doing for iLearn. So when we talk about like standards, frameworks that really unpack what students need to know, what they need to be able to do, the complexity of the questions, item types, like all of that is now coming. We're going to have it all by December, which we've not had from the Department of Education to help support readiness in this area. So I'm excited for that because it's something that teachers of that 11th grade level have been hungry for, because oftentimes it's been using resources like the Khan Academy to like drill and kill and target specific skills that we're going to hit. to have even more resources that you can use for your tier 1 instruction to inform your curriculum maps and planning, that is a huge benefit, and that'll be something that both math and ELA are looking at once they get published in December. Any comments or questions on SAT? So again, celebrations there that you're seeing jumps from the 30th percentile in both math and ELA, and both into the top 20 and 22nd there. So there's moving the needle there favorably. Okay. I'm not sure how much you'd like in the interest of time to go through. What I did for the school improvement plan highlights was, obviously those are lengthy documents. I'm sure you poured through all of them. I just pulled the 3 specific goals from each of the areas so that you can see, just like now that you know where the percentages came from, why the schools chose the percentages that they chose. I don't have to read all of those to you. What I will say, however, is that you'll notice that the formatting of each of them was different, and even the way in which the SMART goals was written was variable, and you'll see that up on the screen. What Mr. Anderson and I talked about is that these were 3-year school improvement plans, and this is the 3rd year of the plan. We want to bring all of our instructional leaders, building principals together when it comes time for this spring going into the summer. We want to create a uniform Tri-Creek School Corporation school improvement plan document that has the essential elements, and we want to create those goals not in isolation of each other, but together, so that all of those building goals have the arrows aligned to kind of a larger district goal in those specific areas. Right now, those goals were aligned to the way that just their students and those cohort kids are doing. We want everybody to kind of play their part working towards what the true district goal is when it comes to those different measures. So in the interest of time, we had the 3 high school goals. All of them were formatted the same. There was an ELA goal, a math goal, and then like some type of either behavioral or attendance goal. So I highlighted this percentages here, but again, in your board packets, you have those goals. They're probably the final 5 to 6 pages of each of those documents.
They were part of the presentations that we had throughout the year from the schools as well.
They will, and then when it comes time to the end, they will talk about how they worked towards those goals as well. I just like to highlight them here because now you see why they chose the percentages that they did, because you had all of that data before it. So I'll go quickly through that. Professional development, obviously you have to, and you saw in the school improvement plans, specific strategies that they were going to use working towards those goals. These are district-wide commitments that we've made to professional development for this year. This is not an all-inclusive list. These are some of the larger overarching commitments that we've made that have consistent touch points throughout the course of the year. Obviously, we have our partnership with Solution Tree, a 3-phase partnership to develop professional learning communities K through 12. Next week and the week after, we continue the 3rd phase where our 2 consultants are coming in to work with 100% of our teachers, not just the guiding coalition, but really getting into like the work of a professional learning community cycle where you're looking at student data, student work, and trying to make those informed decisions about how do we know if they learned it, what do we do if they did, what do we do if they did not, and guiding that work with some consistency across the district. I already highlighted that this is a year for ELA curriculum review and material adoption. That is K through 12. Because that is such an area of need for us, it's a full year process. Come the spring, we'll give a full board presentation on the impact of that ELA curriculum review and recommendations for the 25-26 year. So you'll get that in either April or May of this school year. We did intentional work around evidence-based writing instruction in grades K through 4 all last year. We are building upon that for greater vertical alignment by doing the same work in grades 5 through 8. Even though it talks specifically to writing instruction, we want to teach writing in a comprehensive way that brings in reading comprehension. So looking at the 3 modes of writing that take place with argumentative, informative, and narrative, how do we teach that, not in isolation, but as a part of our literacy block that brings in and develops comprehension skills at the same time? So we have brand new maps for writing in K through 4 that were a result of the partnership last year. We're developing those maps and teaching our teachers on the evidence-based approaches to teaching writing now in grades 5 through 8. So we'll have that K through 8 alignment by the end of this year. I've spoken to you guys before about the literacy summit that we did. Phase 1, it continues. So we're focusing on our K through 2 Title I special education teachers and doing intentional work around the way we teach phonics and phonemic awareness. In phase 2, we expand that to vocabulary and comprehension. In phase 3, we then bring in the fluency piece, and that goes all the way up through the high school level. One of the misconceptions around the science of reading is 1, it's only phonics and phonemic awareness. It's all 5 pillars. And 2, it's only primary. It impacts all of our learners, all of our students. So we will make sure in that 3-phase process that we can continue to develop those 5 pillars K through 12. We highlighted that we received the digital learning grant from the Department of Education, which got us 20 professional development days from an Apple professional learning consultant, and that's specifically focusing on the way in which instructional technology can be integrated to transform learning experiences. I've talked already about the math consultant from Encompassing Education, who was formerly with the Department of Education, with a specific focus on 5 through 8, because we want to close that gap and make sure that the differences between our elementary and our secondary gets more narrow. BSI, you know them well. We love them. Today is September 26th. I've been told that by September 30th, schools should be notified if they've been awarded the school-based mental health grant, which was our $4.4 million offer that we made quite a while back, and it's killing us to sit and wait on it. So hopefully they stay true to their deadline, and by the 30th we hear, and we can have another celebration like we did with Mr. Blackman earlier tonight. I talked at our previous board meeting about our program evaluation for high ability, because obviously a part of our academic achievement is making sure that our students that are identified as high ability are getting the appropriate enrichment to grow and to achieve at the levels of their potential. This is really going to help us when it comes to curriculum and instructional supports, resources, professional development for teachers of high ability students, and those affective things that we can do to help the social emotional needs of high ability students. And then we've also committed to Jimmy Cassis, who Mr. Anderson got to hear at a workshop that he attended, was impactful and influential. So at our January early release day, he's going to come in and do school and district culture with our entire staff. So those are some high-level, district-wide professional development opportunities. There's going to be lots of little things that are happening during our early release days, locally done, or things that come up as opportunities. But these are some of those that directly address areas of need based on the academic data that we shared earlier today. And I think we made it.
That was a lot, thank you. Important. Thank you for putting that all into there.
If at any point truly we want to do a deeper dive into any of those things, any of those areas for like a smaller presentation around a targeted area, just let me know and I'd be glad to put that together.
Could you send us that presentation?
Yes, and I'll send it to Deanne as well. I know I'm not sure what she does with it, but I always send it to her.
Okay.
Give her something to do at night.
All right. Moving on. Approve the school improvement plans for the 24-25 school year. Do I have a motion?
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion?
I'm just questioning why Oak Hill wouldn't be on there.
It got uploaded late. It's there.
Okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Motion passes. Public comment not related to agenda items. None. And the next meeting of the Tri Creek Board of School Trustees is scheduled for Thursday, October 10th, 2024. Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, meeting adjourned.